Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation Conversations at Home. I'm Jacqueline Coley, an editor at Rotten Tomatoes. SAG-AFTRA Foundation has a COVID-19 relief fund to support SAG-AFTRA performers who are in urgent need as this pandemic continues. Since March of 2020, the foundation has given over $6.1 million in aid to over 6,500 performers and families facing extreme hardship. If you are a SAG-AFTRA performer and need help, please ask. And if you're able to help support our community in this crucial effort, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video on how you can help. Without further ado, please allow me to introduce our conversation today with Miss Sarah Paulson to talk about Ratched. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. The first thing I have to say is this is kind of an intimidating prospect, but there's not two things that make me happier than when I hear executive produced by Ryan Murphy, starring Sarah Paulson. So I just have to ask you, how did Ryan pitch this? I mean, which of the many things were you shooting where he pulled you aside and said, I would like you to play Nurse Ratched? And it's going to be gorgeous.
What's funny about it is that he did not come to me with this.
Oh, wow.
Twist. He did not. He did not come to me with this. I actually heard about it through my agent, which is the exact opposite of the way things traditionally happen when it comes to my work with Ryan, which is I get a text. When Crime Story, which we're currently shooting, came in, he was like, the American Crime Story the script came in great. And I was like, what? And he was like, Lady Tripp, Monica Lindsay. I was like, what? I didn't even know this was on but he was talking to me as if it was like a conversation we'd already had. And so I was so things tend to come about in a very sort of friendship collaborator way rather than the sort of official channels of agents. And my agent just called me and she was like, has Ryan mentioned to you this Ratched script he has? And I said, funnily enough, he has not. He has not. And so I called him and I said, look, I don't want to make you uncomfortable because traditionally you have come to me. And so I can only assume that you don't want me for it or you're not interested in me. And I would like to make a case for why I'm your gal. And he was like, well, first of all, have you read it? And I said, no, it's just the idea sounds so great. And how could I, and he said, he said, the only reason I didn't come to you with it is that you've always expressed the joy of a small child on Christmas morning when you get to discover what part you're going to play on American Horror Story, or, this idea of being on a serialized show, but that has no attachment to a previous season and getting to try on all these different characters and these costumes and these personas. And you've always talked about how that has been the real, linchpin for this, you being on a series television show. And I was just like, no, Ryan, I just had never been on a series that had lasted more than a season before I met you. So my attachment became totally connected to the fact that it was successful. And yes, I loved the idea of playing these different characters all the time, but that doesn't mean I don't want to play, the same character year after year. That would be such a blessing and so exciting. And I was like, look, I get you probably want Kate Winslet. I would want Kate Winslet too. I get it. And he was like, no, it's not that. I just didn't think you'd be interested. And I'm still to this day, I'm not sure if that was the real reason, but that's what he said to me on the phone. And then my agent was like, I'm just going to send it to you. And then I called him and I said, if you don't let me do this, I'm going to have to park myself outside your house. And you're sick of me already, but you will never hear the end of it if I don't get to play it. And then, he let
the
me
rest is history.
It's history, yeah.
Listen, though, I actually like this bit of tea because it's this is going out to actors. So this idea that all these parts just get delivered to, and if I have to go ahead and say it, a goddess of television, I just figure, but I love that you still had to have the fight about it because I think the folks watching this can identify with that, feel comfort in that.
And I think it's all about the hustle, ultimately, at the end of the day. I have not lost my hustle and I'm not going to lose my hustle because there's the part of me, and I talk about this a lot, so I hope it's not boring to people, but for me, the part of me that developed most fulsomely before I became an actress that had opportunity was I was a person who just continued to show up and show up and show up and show up. And I will always have that part of me kind of as my North Star, which is, you got to prove it, and you got to keep showing up into the room. And if I remember for Goldfinch, that director did not think I was right for that part. He had only seen American Crime Story, Marcia Clark, and so he was just like, I don't see how these things. And I went in, I made a tape, I brought my props, I put on a wig, I did, I was not. I have that sort of that story is imprinted on me molecularly from when I was a younger actress, and even a not so young actress. My career didn't really shift until I was in my early 40s, like late 30s, early 40s. So
I'm like, why are you lying to these people? You're 27.
No, I'm 27. It's
No.
So I think I had a lot of years of hitting the pavement and feeling like I was a benched athlete waiting for someone to throw me, an opportunity to get on the field. And I think it's really hard to do good work when you're sitting at home and you're not being given opportunity. It's opportunity. And I just felt like sometimes I had to make the opportunity for myself. And sometimes that means calling up Ryan Murphy and saying, hey man, hey friend, what's happening?
Well, I mean, I'm glad you did, because the minute I heard the casting announcement, the show announcement, I was like, yeah, of course. First of all, I don't want to say this because, obviously you both are lovely women, but this is such an iconic role. But like what Louise brought to it, the first thing I thought is, oh yeah, I want to see that on Sarah Paulson. So I'm curious for you though. Yeah, it was an established story. How much did you want to go back to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? Did you want to keep it separate? I know some people have like a different opinion about that if you're playing the same character through different actors in different time periods.
At first, I was afraid to rewatch it. I hadn't seen it since I was a young person whose parents were very young and watched a lot of inappropriate programming for a young person. And I had seen the movie. It had made quite a indelible impression on me. And of course, the character of Nurse Ratched most significantly from that movie. It sort of burned into my brain. And I thought, oh, I can't. That's going to be too big a pill to swallow. I'm afraid I won't be able to manage that. And then I thought, that's disrespectful. That would be really disrespectful to a very extraordinary performance. And the only reason I have an opportunity to do it is because of what she did in that movie. And because, it was not her character's story. However, the mystery and the opacity of her, of the character and the portrayal of it just begs for, more story. And, but her absolute commitment and, just sort of being like rooted into the ground was so powerful. And I thought, if I don't also recalibrate my impression of it from when I first saw it, which was very different than when I watched it in knowing I was about to start it. And I thought, oh, she's not a villain. This is a woman who's a victim of a patriarchal structure inside an institution where she probably isn't asked very often what her opinion is, and perhaps is a woman who never thought to question authority. Not every person is a born activist. Not every person is born to shake and rattle the cages. And I think she was a person who was much more comfortable sort of doing what she was told and following the rules and truly doing, I think, what she felt was best for the patients. And yes, I do think there was a lack of integration between her heart and her mind, but I would argue probably due to the environment she was in, So it was an interesting thing for me, and I thought the most honorable thing to do would be to honor the performance that gave me that bore the opportunity for me, in the first place.
Well, it's definitely an honoring of it. And there was this thing on Twitter the other day, and I have to mention it. It was like, pick a movie character who wasn't the center of the story that you want to see like an entire movie made of them. And I always thought the ones where they pick the villain were the most interesting, because it's sort of the origin of, or again, not that Nurse Ratched is a villain, but someone who's cast as a villain. How did they get there? There was probably a villain in their story at some point. And I loved how this really sort of took it back to see like literally her origins and her family life, which we're going to get into. But when you were doing it in the actual hospital garb and doing all the nurse things, was there any things that you wanted to research from the time period that you wanted to bring into it? Because it is such a period piece. It feels like that old sort of like like Hitchcock horror, like the lights and the way that changes.
Yeah.
So how much of that did you want to bring into it?
Well, it was an interesting thing because, what I felt was, and I do feel this a lot, I don't ever want to have more information than my character has about a subject. I thought, because then you have an opportunity as an actor, whether you mean for it to happen or not, where there is like a permeability where your own knowledge and awareness of something kind of infiltrates what you're doing. And then you can sometimes do something that feels like above or superior to the character, which I feel like is dangerous. So that was the thing. But what I did want was to try to incorporate something that Louise Fletcher did that was identifiable in the movie. I wanted to bring to her earlier time in her life, which was, I came up with the idea of using her key ring. In the movie, she always wore the key ring up on her bicep, particularly in the therapy sessions, or it was in her hand. There's only one shot of her walking down a hallway towards the interior of the ward from outside, which is sort of what I always thought about in terms of our show. Is like, what happens when she leaves the building? What happens when she enters the building? What does she leave behind? And she's always got those keys with her. And so I went up to our prop guys and they were like, yeah, let's do that. That's so cool. And so they went and I was like, it's got to be period of correct, of course, for our story time. But and then there's a moment when Mildred becomes head nurse at Lucia State Hospital where I put it up on my bicep as an homage to Louise Fletcher's Nurse Ratched. But in terms of the research, I wanted to know as much as she would know and nothing beyond that, which is also a way of saying lazy.
No. Well, I mean, look, I would feel this when I was cast to do this. I was like, yeah, I want to know what Sarah Paulson's, like mindset is and how she approaches a role, because it seems like an incredible gift considering some of the people you've played, both real and imagined or fictional versions of characters that are being seen on the big screen. And so, yeah, I want to peek inside your process. Who doesn't? And if it ends up being lazy, all I can say is, girl,
lazy. No, I'm just kidding.
Like, watch the lazy with them Emmys. Kidding. But it brings me to another point too with actors who I've interviewed a couple of folks that you've worked with on separate things like Adina and Cuba and a lot of your co-stars, and they all say the same thing. And most of these things you're like usually maybe top person on the call sheet, definitely in most of the scenes, and they're just talk about how giving you are. And when I look at this cast for Ratched, I mean, just the idea. I just picture Ryan saying, yep, I'm going to get Sarah to go up against Judy Davis and every queer child is going to sing to the gods. So I want to know about the Judy Davis of it and just how much fun you guys had going at it, and any of the cast members for that matter.
Well, the Judy Davis thing for me was no pun intended, a bucket list thing for me, because I remember being a young actress in New York and seeing all of her movies at the Angelica Film Center in New York or at the Lincoln Center Theater, and I went to school right around there, and I just was always in awe of her. I thought she was so brave. She was an actress who was just like devoid of any vanity, and not to say that she isn't a wildly beautiful woman, because she is, but it's like the last thing you notice really, because it's like, it's startling, and then you want to know everything about that person. I mean, she's just really like a living, breathing master of all things. I think she's a very, very special person. However, she made me absolutely apoplectic when Ryan called me and said, so I'm thinking of, he mentioned two names to me, Judy Davis and someone else. And I was like, they're both amazing, but it would be really great if it could be Judy Davis, because it would make me so happy, and also it would make me better. And oh God, it would be such a coup to get her, because she's sort of particular about what she does. So I didn't have high hopes. I thought, she lives in Australia, she's going to want to come here. And then I said, just do me a favor and don't call me. Don't tell me anything until you actually have engaged with her. And if there's any interest, then I want to know. And then he called me and he said, she wants to read them. And I was like, okay, now don't tell me and then he called me and he said, she wants to do it. And I just screamed, and I remember jumping up and down, and then panic set in, because when I got episode 2 and I saw that peach scene, and I thought, I'm going to have to do this stuff with Judy Davis. How am I going to? And it was hard, because that first scene we shot was the scene in the yellow hat where I'm waiting for her in the first episode to come in and hopefully let me meet Dr. Hanover. And it was my second day of shooting, I think. And there I was with Judy Davis. And I just was like, I don't know how to get like the perma grin off my face when that's not really what I'm supposed to be experiencing right now. And I'm also trying to remember my lines, and I'm also trying to study every single thing she's doing so I can steal it and try to recreate it as my own genius. She just, and we became lovely friends too, which is another thing. Because Ryan sort of warned me in the beginning. He's like, she's very quiet. They'd worked together on Feud, and he's like, she doesn't always. So I was prepared, but she was chatty with me. I was into it. I was into the chatting. Judy Davis chatting.
I also just want just a moment to like just take that picture. I don't need to hear what y'all are saying, but I just want that like behind the scenes of you guys like with a coffee, and I'm like, I just want that picture.
It was really something. And you know, when she talks, she has this very sort of, you know, it's really deep voice, and you know, and you're just, it makes her, she could be talking about like her favorite ingredient in like a Raisin Bran, and I just be like, I never wanted Raisin Bran more. I need Raisin Bran every day now. You know, she was I did get a cell phone case. I've talked about this. I got a cell phone case that said Judy fucking Davis on it. And I got sweatshirts for a lot of the crew members that said Judy fucking Davis, which I think she thought I had made. I did not have to have them made. They exist on the internet. Other people feel this way about her. She doesn't understand it. I have a video of her that is one of my prized possessions, of us all walking on the set on her last day with Judy fucking Davis t-shirts and sweatshirts on and my cell phone case. And she just is hot pink, mortified, her head in her hands, which is another reason why she's just delightful. Not a big ego on that one.
That makes me love it even more, because I mean, she could literally be Joan Crawford on set, and
I'd be like, yes, yes, do it. Great. Whatever you need to do, whatever
you're here living it for you.
For it. Yeah, exactly.
The other thing I loved about this, and the reason why I want that picture of you guys behind the scenes, is because then I can get these beautiful costumes and just like the look of Ratched, because let me just say, like, that was the thing that got me in the first, from that like first image with like the script, like it seemed like all of both the production design and the costumings. And one thing actors I've heard a lot say is like, when you get in the wardrobe, then it's the role. So let's talk about the outfits of Ratched. If there's ones that you particularly found, like they really said, this is her to me. And if there was any you wanted to steal.
I wanted to steal a lot of it, actually. There were a lot of her blouses that for me are very, you know, I don't know if you could tell, I like a shoulder. I like a nice strong shoulder. And so this was the era for me. You know, big shoulder helps hide a big ass. I don't know if you know it. Not that I need to hide it, but it's like, it's an ass, baby.
That is a Southern saying.
It is a Southern.
Shoulders to hide.
Shoulders to hide. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm from the South, don't you know? So yeah. So, you know, I learned a thing or two along the way, and this helps. So it was a great era for me physically, because it did all these really amazing things to the silhouette that is very special. It makes a woman look like a real woman. It's magnificent. The hats for me were very special, because, you know, we did a kind of great thing where we only used real 1940s accoutrement to make them stay. So they were bobby pins from the 40s. They were hat pins from the 40s. So we were not ever using any sort of movie going magic to make the hat stay. We were using a real hat pin with a pearl on the bottom. And Rebecca Guzzi, Lou Irick, they're just, you know, the geniuses. Ryan tends to do something extraordinary like this with every project he does. He just hires the best people. Judy Becker, who's our production designer, who made that was all a set. That hospital, the entire interior of that set was built on a soundstage at Fox. That is not a interior of a real building. She made the floors almost look wavy and sort of bumpy, like they were real plaster, and everything was shiny and reflective, and you could see the sort of, the bottom was also the top. It was all this stuff Ryan was doing in terms of the, you know, the duality of Ratched, and almost everyone in the show, really. It was just a beautiful, kind of exquisite communication of his fever dream about this world, which is often how these things get realized.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I cannot believe you mentioned that was a set, because that was actually kind of one of my questions, was like, which hospital and da-da-da. And so this is a set. No, it was at the Fox lot.
Their exterior was a set. Well, I mean, the exterior wasn't a real building, but everything inside the hotel, inside the motel, set, and on the soundstage, inside the hospital, soundstage. Every interior on that show was a soundstage, save for like the Abbey in episode 2, where I go to see the priest. That was a real place. But yeah, I mean, the sets were really Dr. Hanover's office, like my whole
That's
house.
what I was just thinking.
Like,
Literally, I'm picturing
whose
like that
office is this here?
fake
Yes.
window.
Oh yeah, real trees outside it and everything.
Oh
Ryan
my
doesn't like
gosh.
backdrops. They always look very fake to him. So like you got real greensmans out there just like in the wind machines on the, it's just like a whole thing. Ryan does not play.
See, I mean, obviously,
He does not.
as I like to say,
Yeah.
like, yeah.
He doesn't.
One thing I'm sure they've done it. Somebody has to have done it, but I would love, if you ever see those internet shirts where they put someone's face all over there, I would love for someone to take every character that you've played with Ryan Murphy and just get like a collage. No, seriously, because when you look at it like a tapestry like that, don't joke. I mean, it's kind of incredible. All of these characters are singular and separate, and they have their own feel, the seasons and everything else. But even in all that, Ratched would stand out because of everything that they did to it, from the hair to, it is a visual
dream.
Unicorn too. Yeah, a little visual unicorn. Bringing it back to sort of how this story kind of got put together, and the fact that it's going through on Netflix, and that it touches on a lot of things, and this is no stranger to you, where there was a delicacy to it, even though you're portraying it in this very big, very broad, and very camp way. I mean, we're touching on mental illness, you're touching on sexual assault, they're touching on gender and sexual identity, and all of these various moments that, again, have to have a sensitive touch, but they also are part of this very sort of, operatic, almost like story. And I'm just curious how many conversations you guys had with that to be sensitive, because it was not something that I didn't see as authentic.
I think what Ryan did that made that all possible is that he hired actors who are inherently very sensitive people. There are several queer actors on the show. There are people who have lived long lives and have a lot of experience in texturized life experiences that made everybody, I think, very sensitive to both, exactly as you say, that sort of tightrope walk of adding this sort of operatic element to something so real and so close to the bone and with so much at stake that it had to be handled very carefully. But I think, it's a testament to Ryan's sensitivity as a person, but his real magic casting eye in terms of knowing who are going to be the people that are going to give this the most love and care. And I think it's important to him too that there was the fine line of it really being about something. There it's not just entertainment. It is also sort of commenting on a particular time in our history and the way in which mental illness, sexual identity, gender identity, it's potent now, and it was potent then. And I think it's a special note that he tends to play around these issues. That does help make it feel authentic, I think.
Yeah. And it does, like I said, and it doesn't, and again, not mean, because it could feel mean very easily. And to your point, it is a tightrope, one little step off of this way, unintentional, it goes the wrong way. But no, that was one of many things about the show that I was like, this was very deliberate, and you can tell that it was careful, but it was also fearless in the sense that you guys did go to some places.
I think that's the main thing, that if you're gonna say yes to Ryan, you have to know that, I mean, I know that people use the phrase "go big or go home" a lot, but with him, it's like you gotta find a way to ground it, because there is always an element of operatic sound, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when you think about the actors that he works with most frequently, I think the thing that when you're able to work in his world successfully, it is when you are as committed to the reality of that story, no matter how outlandish, obscene, insane, implausible, whatever it is, if the characters believe it, if the actors are invested in it, no matter how crazy it seems to the outside world, I think audiences will go with it. I really do. And that's what makes it, I think, fun to like strap in and be like, where are we going?
Yeah.
Down the rabbit hole, and I'll see you in 8 hours when I'm done watching this thing,
I really love that that's what you guys say when you're making it, because that is literally what I say when I press play. I think that was in my mind. Like when I first got it on my Netflix queue and I'm pressing play on Ratched, like, all right, here we go. Let's strap in, because you know what you're getting yourselves into. And that is a testament to the brilliant body of work you guys put together. People know it's going to be going to be big, it's going to be opulent, it's going to be gorgeous, and it's going to be acted with every ounce of bravado that you would want to bring to these characters, which is great.
That's real commitment, I think.
Yeah.
And lack of judgment, which I think is also integral.
Yes.
Not judging the character nor the story, and Ryan, of course, is open to having conversations about when something goes way out and you're like, sir, I have a question. Sir, I don't know how to make that. This is insane. And he's totally open. He's like, oh, right. Oh, I see. You're like, yeah, okay. And he's totally open for that. But it's really nice to know that you can have that conversation, but to also know that part of your job is to find the place inside the outlandishness and look for what is growing out of the ground there and root yourself to that and then go have a good time. Every actor will tell you there's nothing more fun than playing in a world where anything is possible.
Yes. And I think the scene for me that really epitomizes that, and I have to put it this way because there's no other way, the porno Florence Nightingale. Let's talk about it. Wait, I want to make sure I get this out without laughing because it was like a thing, because there's no way when someone pitches, hey, so she's going to be having a vivid sexual fantasy and she's going to be envisioning that this is taking her back to an amputee who she had a sexual thing with. Oh, but she murders him. And we have to make this both tense and awkward, but then sexual. And then it's also a huge bit of exposition about the character. There is no part of me that wouldn't be like, say, huh? So I particularly want to talk about that sequence because it plays across more than one episode. Correct. And it was, and your scene partner in that one, Corey Stahl. And like, I don't even know how he does what he does in that because it has to just stay.
We laughed a lot, if it's any consolation.
That's what I figured.
We laughed. There were a couple times like where I would go for his throat and I'd be like, or like he put his pants down and I'm like, it's like suspenders and there he is in his boxers and I'm like, we get divorced because you left me at the, and it's just, he's like, what is happening? What is happening right now? And then, there was a lot of, may have sex with me the way a horse has, like a horse or whatever my line was. I can't even remember. Yeah. And we had a very hard time. Like I would look at his forehead sometimes because I was like, I just have to look like up here. If I look you dead in the eye, I'm not gonna be able to do it. And we had to do it.
Again, it's not even like, it's not graphic. It's just literally the idea of, like you said, the commitment of it and having him as a scene partner in that I know is what is incredible because when it gets on his coverage, he has to be just blank. And like, I was in blank and I was removed from it. I can only imagine how hard it was.
We were really laughing, but then we were really laughing. We were. And I remember like the morning we were going to shoot that and we saw each other in the makeup trailer. We were like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Looking forward? Yeah, me too. What is the scene about? We don't know. We're going to figure it out. It's going to be great. And I don't know. I loved the idea. I think we all sort of loved the idea of Mildred having so little understanding of what sexual intimacy was, that it was all an idea of something, mixed with her trying to right some very, very dark wrong of her childhood and what she'd been through with her brother and what it meant to have parents and what love looked like to her. And it just was a big mush in her brain and probably also trying to push aside her sapphic desires that were probably terrifying to her and certainly in the time period. So we tried to just ground it in all the as best we could. And it made sense. But, by the time we ended up parsing through it all, we got to the bottom of what we believed it was to be about. And so we just went to it.
And again, not to poke fun about the intimacy of it, because again, I just was looking at two actors being really great with scene partners, but you had a ton of great scene partners. And like, we're about to get out of here. And so I don't want to I'm not going to ask tons of the questions. Like, I really want to talk about how we made Carol into a horror movie, that whole storyline with you and Cynthia, because I was like, if Carol was a horror movie, that's their love affair. So, but I did want to talk about if there was a scene partner moment with you, because again, you're doing stuff with Judy, you're doing stuff with Cynthia, you're doing stuff with Sharon Stone. Like there's so many scene partners you have. If there was one, when you look back at your time playing Nurse Ratched, that you'll be like, yeah, this is when we did it.
It's so interesting. It's almost like asking me to pick up my favorite child, and I don't have children, so it'd be easier than you think, but it's not easy for me because um, playing Nurse Ratched was the second time in my career. No, that's a lie. The third time in my career, which believe me, I understand is an embarrassment of riches, where I was so bereft when I was finished shooting it. And this was the only time. It happened with Lana Winters, it happened with Marsha Clark, and it happened with Mildred. And the thing about Mildred was that should have comforted me is I knew we were going to do a second season. So it was like, I'm going to get to be with her again. But there was something about it. It was such a deep dive. It was 6 months of some of the most intense, because I was also executive producing. I was in almost every frame of the thing. It felt like a big responsibility. I felt the pressure and the weight of the movie and Louise Fletcher's approval and what would she think, and not wanting to ruin anything. And also the first time I was ever carrying a show on my shoulders. American Horror Story, of which I've had the main character, arguably different seasons. American Horror Story is the star of American Horror Story. The franchise is this show, and I mean is the thing. And you have all these extraordinary actors who come on and do extraordinary things, and the show still and they come and go, and the show still remains what it is. And so I've never had the feeling of playing the titular character and looking around, knowing that people were looking to me for, leadership and guidance and support. And so it was my head was down for a long time doing it. And it was really hard to say goodbye. And I went to shoot Mrs. America 36 hours after I wrapped Ratched. It was very wild and totally crazy. So it's very hard for me to think of a favorite thing. However, there was a sequence that I have to do with Judy in episode 7, where I come into the room and she's waiting for me, and she has found the tape with the recording, and she knows that I've been lying, and she's figured it all out. And so it was a twofold thing of, there I am with Judy Davis, just Judy Davis and I in a scene together. But we had pretty much done everything as sequentially as possible. So we had done, 5 months of work together. And so our working relationship had become deeper and richer, as well as our personal relationship had become something more significant to me anyway. Cut to her being like, I don't even know who she is. Sarah Paulson. Who is Sarah Paulson? But I don't think she feels that way. But, I don't want to speak for her in terms of what her connection to it was. But I remember feeling like it was this moment where Mildred sort of starts to weep because she knows she's been found out. She starts trying to manipulate her and then realizes she can't. And then all of a sudden it forms this transformation in their relationship that then subsequently leads to my favorite section of scenes, which is in the finale with Judy, where I go to her and I ask for her help with my brother. And I found that it was very emotional for me to do. I felt like I had an extraordinary scene partner. She was the kind of person where, literally snot was dripping down her back. And I was like, I'm so sorry. And she just would pet my shoulder. And I was like, Judy Davis is touching me. She's consoling me. Judy Davis is worried about my health and well-being. Judy Davis, it was just like all I could do was like, so those scenes I feel like from an acting standpoint were thrilling to me because it's Judy fucking Davis, kids. And there I am in a scene with her. And no matter whether the show had been anything anybody cared about or not, I was going to have this experience of having worked with not only that actress, but every single one of them. Sophie Okoneat. I mean, I just like the performances on that show, I think are a marvel, really. And I feel very, very lucky to have been part of it. And the fact that people actually watched it and liked it and, is the most delicious icing on an already very, very filling cake.
Yeah, and we all know, since we're doing this via Zoom, we're at home, but shows like Ratched were like the popcorn thing that you kind of needed to just really transport. So I have to thank you and everyone involved in that one. Miss Sarah Paulson, thank you so much, because I really would love to talk to you for like 8 hours, and I'm not joking in any way, shape, or form.
We'll do it again.
Well, I hope so. And best of luck in the season. And thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.